Welcome back to another episode of the Scoop Around the Loop. My name is Thomas. We got Andrew Springer here with us today, and we got Tyler Springer here with us today. This is a weekly podcast that we do to talk about Des Moines area real estate, Des Moines area news, and to just give you more of a background into what the life of a real estate agent is like and let you learn more about us. Andrew, Tyler, how's your day going, guys?
I didn't wear a coat today, so it's going well.
I also did not wear a coat today. Tyler, coat, no coat.
White t-shirt.
White tee. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good day. Good day when you can wear a white tee all day. I mean, even a couple weeks ago, I was down here in my basement in like a beanie and a sweatshirt and all that. So
let's start out. Andrew, you kind of had a quick, crazy week because your schedule got all thrown into a loop because you got the honor of being selected for jury duty, and you actually got selected.
So I got summoned, and it was funny because which is when you get the postcard in the mail and says you got to come down. And I was talking to a buddy of mine who's an attorney. He's like, "Oh, it'll be great because you'll get to get close with all these jurors, and who knows, you might be able to sell a house to them." And there ended up being 3 realtors in our jury pool. And so, which goes to show if you don't know a realtor, you really don't know anybody. And then the guy in the jury, so you go in and you sit, there's like 25 of you. If you've never been a part of that process, I'm going to tell you about it. You go in and the attorneys interview people. And it's crazy, like what they knew about people. Like, so Miss Smith, your husband works at John Deere, huh? You know, or like, Miss Jones, your husband grew up in Runnels. So they do their research on the jurors.
What did they know about you?
Nothing. I only talked about Iowa State basketball in all their questions.
What?
They asked what I like to do. I said Iowa State basketball. It's a great time to be alive. And in the fall, it's Iowa State football.
So they assumed you're down in the dump.
Well, and I mentioned also that I have 3 kids and a dog, and I never brought up I have a wife, and just you're on the spot, like you got to think. And anyways, the guy in front of me says that his job is a West Des Moines traffic control technician, and they moved across the room to somebody else, and I leaned into him and I go, "Hey, I got a traffic light by my house. It doesn't work really well." Like, for 5 years we've lived there. This light is the slowest light I've ever seen. Like, I help all of my girls get out and hit the crosswalk button sometimes so it changes. But he pulls it up on his phone as we're sitting there, and he shows it to me. He goes, "Is this the one?" It's the live feed of that intersection. And he goes, "Yep, the sensor's off." So he's like, "We'll take care of it." And I think he did. Like, the last couple of times we've been through it, it's working pretty
You
quick.
should have texted me that that's who you were talking to, because there's off the 235 exit on 63rd, if you're trying to go what would be south, that one is really slow too.
That's Windsor Heights though. So
sorry.
Yeah. So
I don't know if that went through.
That was Windsor Heights, so it's a different.
Oh, is that Windsor Heights?
Yep.
That's West Des Moines.
No. West Des Moines starts at 8th Street there.
Fair enough. All right. My complaint is taken away.
But so anyways, we got selected for this trial, and they say, would you be prejudiced towards this person or that outcome? Do you know any of these people? So it's interesting. And I got selected, and I kind of said, if I get selected, I'm not going to be bummed out about it. I think it's an interesting process to be a part of. But if they didn't select me, obviously I was going to have my full week ahead of me. We got selected. We couldn't talk about it all week until like the jury reached a verdict, and it was an interesting case. I mean, I think I was lucky to be on this one because it was such an easy thing to decide. But essentially, this guy, I'll be real brief because it was a 3-day trial, so I'll try to summarize it in 2 minutes. Basically, this guy got drunk several years ago, staying at his aunt's house. Tried to break into this house, thinking it was his aunt's house. It was a neighbor's house. He wasn't trying to break in; he was just trying to get in, but he couldn't figure out why the door wouldn't open. So he's like pounding on the door and trying to get through the window, stuff like that. He pled guilty to public intox, and then there was a trespassing charge that this neighbor dropped, but she filed no contact order against him, and it lasted 5 years or something like that. Anyways, no issues. He goes off to school in Ames and gets arrested for armed robbery, and ends up going to jail. And unbeknownst to this lady, she sees in 2022, she sees this individual walking across her yard or walking across her sidewalk, flipping her off, grabbing his junk and making all of these gestures towards her house, yelling incoherent things while not going on her property. So and she said it looks like him, sounds like him, walks like him. Clearly he looked like he didn't want to be on my property. She files it happened 3 times. Neighbors said they saw this individual. And they, so she files a complaint. The police department files, and the detective looks at the video, says, okay, yep, we filed a no violation, a no contact order, gets charged, two charges, goes to the county. Well, the county says, well, this guy's in jail. Like, he's been in jail this whole time, so it couldn't have been him. So the charges get dropped. The lady still swears it's him. But she's like, obviously it can't be, but I swear it is. Like, I know what I saw. All the neighbors are saying, yes, that was him. Anyways, during that period that he was being charged, those charges were pending, he claimed that he suffered mental anguish and anxiety for the malicious prosecution. So he was seeking $50,000 in damages. And that was what we had to decide, was if he was owed any money. And ultimately we arrived at, like, she didn't act with malice at all. Like, she would do what any 90-pound, elderly woman would do. And that would, if she saw someone doing that in front of her house, when she knows, she didn't know the guy was in jail. That was her story. So, in that particular trial, there's 5 questions that had to be answered. All of them had to be yes in order for him to be awarded anything. How they arrived at 50,000 was also like, he's like, well, my attorney suggested that number for punitive, and the other thing was medical distress, and he was worried about his reputation, what people would think if he had these if he violated a no contact order. Mind you, he's in jail for something much more serious. But so we asked, what medical attention did you receive? And he didn't really talk to somebody, a fellow prisoner, about his medical issue. And so ultimately we arrived at, like, no, he's, if anything, if anybody caused mental anguish, it was, probably the detective for not doing any research on the guy to know that he was in jail the whole time before pressing charges. So, interesting process. We deliberated for 5 minutes. They took our lunch order. Yesterday morning, and it probably took longer for us to write our lunch order down than it did to actually reach a decision. So, because it was like 3 of the questions were easy no's for the jury. So, interesting process. And my time has been served, I guess. I don't think I won't get called again for another 2 years at least. But anyone that gets called, I think it's worth your time to check out the process. I think it's very interesting. So,
Tyler, have you ever been summoned?
Nope. And
this is my 3rd time being summoned too.
I've been summoned 4 times, and I've never got selected. I've never even gotten to the interview process that Andrew is talking about.
Yeah, and I can't lie, the way my mind works, how Andrew just made me not want to go even more. I don't want to experience that.
Okay, let's get into some local news. I shared this article with you guys a week ago because I think it's kind of interesting. The city of West Des Moines paid for a consultant to analyze, not West Des Moines, I said West Des Moines, Des Moines, the housing situation in Des Moines, and come up with solutions to have more housing available and have more affordable housing available, And basically, his suggestion is targeting certain blocks, certain neighborhoods, and with the help of private investors and city investment, having basically offering these people cash to sell their homes so they can either remodel them or completely tear them down and build new construction. I am. Nope. Oh no. What did I do?
Oh, we're still here.
Can't cancel. I'm gonna cancel that. There we go.
What did you do?
It was something that I was just seeing on my end, so don't worry about it.
Anybody want to guess what he saw? Leave it in the comments.
It wasn't anything bad. It was just a black screen, so I thought we were just advertising a black screen. They're specifically looking at, I mean, there's a lot of old inventory in Des Moines. They pointed out 45,000 single family homes that are aging, and they're considered what he called an albatross because a lot of these homes, which you guys have probably shown some of them, are 1 bath, 2 bed, maybe 3 bed, small little bungalows or ranches. And that sounds like what they're specifically trying to target. They mentioned like parts of the Merle Hay neighborhood, around the Drake neighborhood, and around the Fairgrounds neighborhood, and then a few other neighborhoods. And in ideal world, they would be looking at doing this basically block by block, and getting investors' commitment into this. And they really think it would only work, as opposed to what the city of Des Moines has been doing recently. They think something like this would only work if they do it at large scale. Because Tyler, Andrew, you guys can probably talk more about this, but there are Invest DSM, I think started. Do you guys know? Did they start like 5 years ago?
Yeah, I want to say during pandemic times.
Yeah, they started that as what they called like as part of their attack on blight. And I think that they flip. It doesn't seem like they do a ton, but it seems like somewhere around 3 or 5 houses a year. And they do a lot of what this is talking about. But this is an even more large scale operation, and they're willing to tear down houses with this. So what are your guys' thoughts on this when you immediately see a story like this?
I think something like this is probably what needs to happen in an ideal world. I mean, the real estate is already there. If anyone that drives through Des Moines on a regular basis, you see these homes all over the place. Again, whether it's the land or if they're beyond repair, the home itself, they just need some dollars. So I like the idea of everything they're talking about, but it's also a matter of getting things done. I think leaning into things like Invest DSM Des Moines puts on another program called like the ION program, where it's for people making 80% or less of the area's median income. And it helps with like exterior projects, to kind of, again, tackle some of like the curb appeal stuff and just what people see as they're driving through the neighborhood. I think leaning into programs like that to incentivize people and investors, private investors, to come in and put actual dollars into it versus relying on government and things like that to do it. But I think Invest DSM does a lot more than 2 or 3 houses a year.
Is it quite a bit more than that? I'm saying that it's just because of what I see listed.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of my thing with Invest DSM, they take, and granted, like these homes are huge, but they're doing a lot of work in the $500,000, $600,000 range, which obviously that doesn't help with affordable housing at all.
Right. That was one of the big concerns I had when I see an article like this, when they're talking about tearing down some of these smaller homes, which I agree, there's probably more of those than they actually need in the market right now. But with Des Moines City Code right now, if they were to tear something like that down, they would be replacing it. If it has to meet code, they would be replacing it with a 3-bed, 2-bath house that has to have a 2-car attached garage.
It has to be so big square footage wise.
Yeah, I think is it 1,500 square feet finish? Is that what it is? If it's a ranch?
Something like that with new construction. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if there'd be some sort of caveat to that program. I think the thing that like California is a good example with people that their homes were destroyed in that big wildfire. Those people live there for so many years and they can't just afford, so they had $1 million home, but they bought it for 100,000,
Yeah.
30 years ago. So they can't afford to build a like kind and quality house by today's standards because of what the demand is today. That would be one of my concerns for people in that area is, um, are we doing enough? Are they doing enough of the homes to, not have regression in terms of value where, you put a really nice home in there, but it's not really worth as much because of the neighborhood. That'd be a concern, but also like this isn't free money. Like it's going to be, they say it's, it's free, but it's going to be paid, somehow. What do they say, 50 to 20 million per block. Well, how are they going to get that back? It's going to be because they're going to raise the value of these areas. And so property taxes are going to kick up. And so, like it all sounds good on paper, right? Hey, we're going to knock this house down and we're going to build a newer, nicer house. But, can the person that lives in that house, even if you buy them out, and they move away, can they get something? Can they afford it for something different? I think these are all things that are obviously going to have to flesh out. But that's kind of my first, my initial thoughts on it is
and
it's probably not as cut and dry.
Yeah. One of the big concerns that this consultant pointed out too is the age of some of these people that currently own these homes that he's talking about. He was concerned about them passing away, leaving it to a child that doesn't even want it, and then Des Moines is going to have more and more vacant homes. But in my mind, I would like to see them focus way more on remodeling if possible. I know that there's homes in Des Moines, there's homes everywhere that in all likelihood need to be tore down, but I think the affordability that they're quote unquote concerned about will stay down if they focus on remodeling as opposed to building these brand new construction homes. On the flip side of it, it's though Des Moines really doesn't have a lot of new construction available if you compare it to some of the suburbs around it, just because
it's
landlocked.
They're landlocked. Yeah.
Anything new construction is a $600,000 townhome. And I think some of like the city of Des Moines' idea of affordability and our idea of affordability are two different things, I think. And I think that's where some of the issue would arise, like you're saying, is again, they're not going to build back a home that someone that was living in a $120,000 house beforehand can afford,
right.
And that's what needs to be there is something for someone barely making ends meet, whatever, we all know what that looks like. That's the housing that we need is for housing for people like that, not, but.
Yeah. And I think
I mean, it's cool that they're, consulting and actually, trying to consider plans and things like that. I think Des Moines it's not the oldest city out there, but obviously it's getting to the point where going on 200 years in 20 years or so. So some of these homes that have been around, they're going to be going on to 150 years old.
Yeah.
I would say too, like just as a Christian, I think churches could do a better job of sending more money into the inner city to help people, getting teams together at your church to go in and help renovate some of these homes. And
even providing more resources to help them maintain the houses too. I know that they have city programs right now that you could potentially get grants for like exterior work and stuff like that. I think that they should.
That's what I was talking about. I'm looking up what it's like, the Improving Our Neighborhoods initiative, and they have grants available. And again, it's all like income based. So if you make 80% or less of the median income, which in Des Moines, that's for a single person household, that's $63,000. So if you
Yeah.
make less than that, you can get qualified for certain things. And they have like a $3,500 grant for exterior stuff. But then they offer, for people making less than 50% of the median income, they offer a really cool thing where it's 40 grand of funds available for exterior work. So that can obviously tackle some pretty big things. But then the issue is they pay half of it, and then the buy or the homeowner has to pay the other half. And it's like, okay, if their house has already gotten to this point, what are the odds they can pay it back? So like, how many people are really using that? If they're making 50% less than what the median income is in the city of Des Moines, how are they going to be able to pay back?
Maybe they do that through a lien, where like if it's a $10,000 grant where they're saying the homeowner, or $10,000 allowance, 5,000 is a grant, 5,000 has to be repaid. It's going to be a lien and when it sells, they'll get their $5,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's how I believe
what it is. Yeah.
I believe that's how West Des Moines was structured. They did
with the Valley Junction one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It was just like a silent second that when you came time to sell, you had to pay it off.
Could you be there for so long and not owe it, or would you always have to pay it off? I wonder.
I believe it was 10 years.
That's right. Because I think you and I talked about that at the time. It's like, are you going to be there 10 years?
Yeah. And I think it was 10 years as your primary residence too. Yeah. Because eventually I'm going to turn this house into a rental. And I was like, well, yeah, I'll probably own it in 10 years, but it's not going to be my primary residence. So I didn't qualify for it based on that. But if they figure out a way to help people keep these homes in shape, they'll be avoiding a lot of those issues. Like you mentioned, if a family member passes away, if it's in good shape, I would think that the family member would want to take it over, or it would be really, really easy to sell to a first-time home buyer and stuff like that. So
yeah, and I mean, again, invest DSM. Again, leading and putting more funding into that. If you're going to put funding into anything, I think is a really good way to go. Like we had clients that bought a house in the Drake neighborhood, and they've put on a front porch and they laid a whole new driveway on their 110-year-old home within like 4 months of them owning the house with Invest DSM.
Was that is Neighborhood Finance Corporation and Invest DSM the same thing?
Different things.
Different things.
FC is like a lender.
Yeah. Yeah, because I know they help out with a lot of projects like that too. So I was just curious.
SDSM, this ION thing, I pulled it up. So it says financial assistance of up to $40,000 is available on a first come, first served basis as funding allows. Qualified applicants are property owners whose income is at or below 80% of the area median income. For Polk County, funding is determined once repairs are identified by ION inspectors as critical. Up to $3,500 for grants for small critical projects. People making 50% or less will receive 100% forgivable funding up to $20,000 and an additional $20,000 in a 50-50 lien for critical repairs. So yeah, Andrew, you're right.
And so that's not even limited to exterior stuff. That's just anything in the house.
No, this is exterior. ION is all exterior stuff. So they say foundation repair that's visible from the exterior, roofs, siding, driveways, walkways, windows, doors, and then like stuff on the lot, like drainage issues.
Okay. So foundation's included. That's really good.
And drainage issues, as we all know, that leads to a lot of foundation issues. Yeah. And again, that's where I think the majority projects are, for the most part, much, much more expensive and lead to interior issues as well. So if things can be done to help with the exterior stuff, like you're saying, I think that'd go a long way.
Because a majority of what I've seen is, when I've looked at some of those homes that are around that age, is just the foundation is way too far gone and someone needs to come in and just take it out in most cases.
Yeah. And who living in a home like that, if it's gotten to that point, who can realistically afford to have that done?
you have any questions about that or want to see the article, Des Moines Register was who ended up putting that article out and kind of summarizing all of that. Okay, so we're going to do some market stats. And I chose to do 50266 because we recently had a West Des Moines listing, but we had already talked about 50265 very recently. I got a very beautiful picture of the Jordan Creek Lake here.
This is my favorite zip code to sell a house in.
It is your favorite zip code to sell a house in. Let's run through the stats and then let's kind of talk about some things that stand out to this because I do think it's somewhat interesting. We got months of supply at 2.48 months, so still would be considered a seller's market, but getting really, really close to neutral depending on who you talk to. 6.42% down from last year. Median days on market right now, they're looking at 39 days.
Which being inventory
15.
being down would, obviously mean it's still a seller's market in that sense.
Yep. Sold to list price ratio, we're looking at 97.8%, which I think is the lowest of the markets that we featured lately. Last year it was at 98.7.
I wonder if that's because of all of the new construction in West Des Moines and builders.
That's what I was going to mention.
Inventory.
In that, I mean, the new construction thing that you just mentioned, this is a crazy number. The median sold price is $449,900. Last year it was $435,000.
I think the first. I mean, obviously this is one zip code, but I think my first year in real estate, the median price in Des Moines, like Des Moines Metro, was like something like 180.
Yeah, and this is. I mean, I haven't pulled up the stats and looked at Des Moines Metro as a whole lately, but I would imagine this has to be one of the higher median sold prices in Des Moines. I mean, maybe Waukee,
I'd say.
Waukee, Northwest.
Or Ankeny.
Yeah.
Did we do Ankeny? What was Ankeny?
We did. Ankeny's was.
You remember that?
It was like higher twos. I think it was 259, 226.
I don't know how many Ankeny zip codes there are, I guess.
There's two different Ankeny zip codes. The one we did would have been the older part of Ankeny. But yeah, because I think 50265 was in the higher twos as well. But yeah, I mean, like Andrew mentioned, I think it's just because it's so much new construction. And then what's the cutoff to the east is 60th Street, right? Is that what it is? For 50266? Or is it 50th Street?
We'll look real quick.
I'm pretty sure it's 60th and west.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is my favorite zip code to sell in for a couple of reasons. Obviously, we all know how realtors are paid, and the median sold price is up there. So just really speaking, you're going to be selling a decently nice house. All the homes are new or newer. So in terms of issues that buyers and sellers have to work through on inspection stuff, seem to always be pretty easy to overcome. It's not just complete new construction like some of the zip codes in like Northwest Urbandale or Waukee are, where you're driving around trying to find where a house actually is. Like pretty much everything is mapped out on like Google Maps and stuff, so you can find a house really easily.
Yeah.
And in between showings, there's no shortage of food options. And I like to stop by, especially in between showings, I like to stop by Shields and see what Lane is cooking up in the athletic shoe department. You can't do that in Ankeny or any, It's all reasons to like this area code.
Market stats in the 20566.
Oh.
So little lesson. North of Ashworth is 50266. In West Des Moines, and that goes to I-35. So east of I-35, south of Ashworth, it's 50265. West of 35, it's 50266.
There it is.
I'm fixing this.
Our
Did
grandma
anything?
lives, our grandma lives in 50266, and I always thought that was the better zip code because my grandparents' house was so nice. I was like, that's where the nice homes are.
They don't have Valley Junction though, so they don't have any culture. They have Cheesecake Factory. So,
Cheesecake or culture? What do you want?
Andrew, did anything stand out to you there?
No, I mean, other than the average days on, what was it?
It's up to 39 from 15 last year.
I wonder what the oldest home in 50266 is. Obviously, there's a couple homes some of them are gone now. Where
How about grandma's house? Used to be that little farm.
Or that, but like where that steakhouse is now across from Luther Church of Hope, those houses were pretty old, but they got wiped out. I'm thinking those have to be like the oldest houses in 50266, like right there around Long Ashworth.
What is that, like 80s?
No, I mean, some of them were like
farmsteads.
Old. Yeah.
North of Ashworth, on the north side of Ashworth, there's some older homes.
Just
like
kind of
in
terms
West
of like
Jordan
developments, they're all like, 90s at the latest.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm looking up really quick to see if I can tell you what the oldest one listed right now is.
I do the oldest sold last year.
Could do that.
You look up your thing, I'll look up my thing.
Tyler, talk.
So again, as far as the age goes, like if you're looking, that could be a criteria if you're a home buyer. If you're looking for a newer home for the sake of not having to deal with as much neglecting maintenance and stuff like that, maybe 50266 versus 50265. If you're wanting to be in West Des Moines, is the area that you target and kind of hone in on, because again, the old homes I think are few and far between.
Oh yeah, so like I said, anything north of Ashworth is 50265 in West Des Moines. So there's
some like 60s.
Yeah, north of the cemetery there in West Des Moines.
Yeah.
So there's 50s.
I think the biggest thing with the zip code is it, as far as like a spot to be, where there's just a bunch of stuff close by. I don't think there's really anything that beats it.
Yeah.
And if you're in 50266, you get depending on what part of it you're in, you get to enjoy all the stuff that's coming to Waukee as well. So it's just a really good spot to be in.
I mean, we're biased to West Des Moines. I think all of us are, as we've probably made it aware on the show by this point. But people that live like up around Prairie Trail, they still have to come to West Des Moines for stuff. You know what I mean? Like Creek Mall and things like that. So I would agree with that. Like there is other places that have a lot going on, Altoona, Prairie Trail, Ankeny, but
can we talk about the mall really quick? Is Jordan Creek Mall, is it just going to continue to be a monster for the years to come, or is it ever going to?
Iowa's Mall.
Yeah.
That'll be like the state of Iowa's Mall. What's the mall looking like nowadays where you started your career at?
Yep. Every time I go, they still have, to me, what is an insane amount of foot traffic. Like
Shields there, obviously.
Yeah. And I mean, they just got that Von Mar. I did see that. Did you guys see that On the Border closed?
Yeah, I'm not surprised. No, I mean,
ever since they made their salsa available in stores, I've never been.
No, I mean, like 5 years ago, it was fine. But like Jesse and I went a few months ago on a Friday night. There was 3 tables, and it stunk like fish so bad. The tables were sticky again. Like there was 3 tables on a Friday night at like 8:00. So I kind of felt like the writing was on the wall a little bit there. I mean, it used to be the spot to go for Mexican because you had the whole mall area. And
I think there's more like authentic and more like flavorful Mexican.
If you're in the Jordan Creek area, there's still Monterey over there. So Monterey's okay.
Monterey's great.
Yeah.
But think about like, you compare like Valley West, we talked about that a couple weeks ago. Compare Valley West Mall and, it's the mall, and then you have like one area of other retail. I mean, further down University, you got more, but Jordan Creek, like it's miles of retail options.
Yeah.
Like
I gotta
like
go
stretching.
And other than the restaurants, every time the store closes there, it seems like they fill it like in a second.
Yeah,
Yeah,
was
I
it,
mean,
didn't
they also have-
Abercrombie come back?
Yeah, Abercrombie came back, and just like that Starbucks in the mall closed, they immediately filled it.
Five
They just
five borough bagels.
yeah, they just got that rally house there, which is crazy because
two rally
that
houses within a half
right,
And then there's one right
yeah,
by my house, so there's three, pretty close to each other.
yep, and then it seems like they never fail to fill spots. I will say now that On the Border announced that they're closing, I don't think no one's filled in that spot where Joe's Crab Shack is, have they? So there's two vacant restaurants like right next to each other, which is kind of weird.
And
Which
Dave and Buster's went in across the lake too. So I mean, I'm sure that's taking. We talked about Sidetown last week. Taking from something else. That's kind of a cause and effect of a place like that.
Yeah, it took up parking spots as well too. Speaking of Sci-Town, that David Buster's drives me insane.
I think Jordan Creek too. I mean, they've done a pretty good job of. I mean, obviously it's mostly retail, but like in terms of they do the tree lighting thing. You see people out walking around the pond. Tonight, I'm going out to Jordan Creek because Isaiah has swim lessons at Aquatops, and
Heck yeah.
there's
It's
kids out there. Now Top Golf is out there, so like it's also
it's an experience. I mean,
so
the whole-
destination for, like I said, I mean that's as good as you're gonna get in the state of Iowa.
you have
Go
two rally houses. You have Dick's Sporting Goods. You have Shields. You have Costco.
All the anchor stores are
Nike.
good.
You have Nike right there.
Yeah.
So
Have you, Thomas? That K-Pot seems right up your avenue. Have you been there yet?
I have not. No. Have you been there?
I could see you being a raw red meat eating dude.
What are you saying?
Like Japanese like cuisine. Isn't that what it is? Maybe it's Korean. Is that why it's called K-Pot?
It's Korean. It's Korean barbecue.
Well,
And
okay. East Asian.
are they one of the ones that has the little
Yeah, where you
frying
cook
thing
it.
on the table?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's go. I should go there. That sounds like a
I've
good
been to
time.
one in Houston, Texas. My good friend Chase Mullen loves this restaurant. He goes there like once a week, it seems like, and he was talking it up, and I was very underwhelmed by this one in Houston. It wasn't a K-pop, but it was the same thing. But I don't know. I'll give it a shot eventually.
I tried to go to one in Orlando, and then we walked in the front door, and they said, "Hey, we don't have any running water."
Seems
So,
necessary.
and they were like, we're still technically open, and I'm like, I'm not gonna eat at a restaurant that has no running water.
highly cleaning the dishes.
Yeah, because like they bring out everything on a separate dish. Like your table is full of dishes with all different types of meat and stuff to try. So yeah, I feel like that's funny.
All right, let's talk about, for real stories this week, let's talk about things we look at when we're showing houses to people that they potentially want to buy. And I thought for no lack of a better word, I put stats, but just information that you could get from looking at a listing. I wanted to get your guys' idea of like one or two things that you're always making sure to look at before showing a house to someone.
I thought this was something else so I was thinking of something real quick. I'm gonna go down this trail real quick. Stories about showing homes. I had a client once who was particular about the weirdest things. Like he would get underneath a dryer to make sure like there was no lint and stuff like that. He'd walk up to the walls in the basement and knock on them, like concrete walls. Like, what are you doing?
Style?
Yeah, like what are you doing? He's like, make sure it's not soft. Like concrete's not gonna be soft, dude. Anyway, that's what I thought you were going. Anyway,
Tyler, when you're looking at a listing on Matrix and preparing to show a buyer a house, what are you looking at?
I always look at the seller's disclosure just to get the general, age of things, if anything's listed. And the nice thing on Matrix is you can go back to previous sales, assuming that it's been sold with an agent that reported to the MLS, and look at seller's disclosures from 1, 2, 3 sales prior to see what, to get dates of the roof and the HVAC system. And
that tip has helped me out a ton because I've had some situations where the previous seller reported water and then the new one didn't report anything because it may have not happened while they were in the house, but
and legally they don't. And legally they don't have to disclose it if it didn't happen.
Right. And then I always, among other stuff, obviously, but something that I always look at the parcel map, just to make sure of what like the lot lines are, because it's always a question that gets asked, and I want to do better than just it's right there, I think. But also just to make myself familiar with the neighborhood, and if there's a walking trail over there, or park over there, or selfishly to make it seem like I know what's going on fully, So those are two things. I'm always going to be aware of what's around the house and the seller's disclosure stuff.
Yeah, Andrew, what are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean, if someone's looking for a 4-bedroom house, $500,000 or less, and one pops up, but they don't want to back to a busy street. Obviously, those are things. I look at the map, like Tyler said. How close is it to a busy road? When was the last time it was sold? And is there a big difference in price? And if so, like looking back at the prior listing photos, what have they changed? What have they done to update it? Or are they just, trying to take advantage of the market? And a house is going to be what someone will pay for it, obviously. So you can price it for whatever you want, but yeah, that's probably the first thing I look at. Like, how does it compare to the one the last time it was listed? And then, it really depends on the buyer, like, hey, I want, sometimes on Zillow, you can't see when it says 4 bedrooms, how many are in the basement, how many are on the main level.
Mm-hmm.
If someone wants a ranch with 3 bedrooms on the main, okay, well, where are all the bedrooms? And obviously in our system, it lays it out line by line where those rooms are. So,
what our system doesn't lay out that I have a buyer that's looking for right now, and I just have to look at pictures, where the washing machine is.
But you can search for that first floor, second floor laundry. But you mean like
a lot of agents don't do that checkbox. So
well, they don't have Thomas Minor as their transaction coordinator.
One thing I just thought of, because I did it at the beginning of this episode on a side tab, because I was scheduling showings, is I'll go into showing time and look at what are the showings are scheduled, because you can see the blocked up, just to get like a general idea if this is a super hot listing and a bunch of people are going to be looking at it, because knowing that can kind of
a lot of times
urgency and stuff like that.
A lot of times it's nice to see too, like if there's only one other showing, like when it is too. I hate to be the buyer's agent that tries to bully people into accepting an offer before their next showing, but if we're going to see tonight and they have another showing scheduled at 4 tomorrow, like I'm gonna put the response deadline.
Before the other showings.
We have at our disposal, so might as well use it.
Yeah. I think it's not the be all end all, but I am gonna mention price per square foot. Especially if the buyers are continuously looking at homes that are right around the same size, price per square foot can give you kind of an idea of
if it's updated.
how good a shape the house is supposed to be in, There are some things
I think that's really good to use, like when it's a high price per square foot for the area and you go in there and it's dumpy. Like that's a telltale sign that it's, in that case, I think price per square foot is a pretty good metric to use. Like if it's a high price per square foot, but it needs a ton of work, then obviously it's overpriced.
Especially if they're like, if your buyer's always looking at 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage houses, theoretically, if they're in the same neighborhood, they should be somewhat close to each other. So I think that's a pretty good metric. Tyler mentioned kind of getting an idea of how old the roof, HVAC, and all that stuff is. I normally like to figure out if there's been any history of water damage. I'm normally, if it's an older home, I'm trying to see if they have anything on the sewer, if it's been replaced or what the story is with that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Yeah, I mean, Andrew mentioned it a little bit, like how long has someone owned a house too? Sometimes that can kind of give you some insight. If I'm generalizing, usually if it's an older couple that's owned a house for a long time, it's like the bones and all that stuff seems to be well taken care of, but maybe there's just a handful of cosmetic things to look at as well.
If they're selling it quickly, on the other hand, too, that more than likely means that you would think that the buyer, that seller had their own inspection done too. So you would think too that if they sold it recently, it should be in decent shape, you know.
We just had a listing recently where the seller just went back to the inspection they did when they bought the house and just made sure those things, all of the cosmetic or the, you know, like your checkpoint, you know, like your honey-do list type. That's what I call them, you know, like things that are really like contingency things on a purchase offer, but things you should look at, like your maintenance things. You know, they just made sure all of those things were buttoned up. You know, some of them, you know, were further along in their need to be repaired or looked at than when they bought the house. And so they just used that inspection or were able to really clean stuff up that way. So.
Okay. All right. I think that was a productive conversation. Let's go into our last segment here. Let's have a little bit of fun. Let's talk about our favorite Iowans.
Oh, snap.
And I think, how do we want to do this? Do we want to each pick one, or do we want to each pick two? There's only three of us here.
Well, so I have three, but one is dead.
I'm thinking
one is alive, and one is fictional.
I'm thinking we do a draft so we don't double up. One's fictional. Oh, I know which one you're going with that.
No, that's not that one. I didn't pick that one because I knew most people probably know.
Holly Flax from The Office. Her character is from Des Moines.
You know what? You know what I've run into before we get into our favorite Iowans? Just Des Moines, like being mentioned in TV shows and stuff like that.
Think of the most random place ever that no one thinks about ever.
I've run into it like with two different TV shows that I mentioned where they were like, oh, well, you could just quit your job here in New York City and move to Des Moines if you want. And it's just like a consult.
Yeah, it's either Iowa or Kansas. It's one of the two that always gets like mentioned about.
Okay, so how do we want to do draft order? Do we want to do tallest to shortest, shortest to tallest, or youngest to oldest, or oldest to youngest?
Shortest to tallest.
So I get to go first?
We'll go in the order we see on the screen.
Let's go. Okay, so I get the first overall pick. I don't think you guys are going to take – what?
Wembanyama.
He's not from Iowa. He's from France. I am going to take a basketball player, though. I'm going to take Caitlin Clark. I'm sorry.
She's good. I mean, if you consider all things, Andrew, and actually step back, she's probably the most famous Iowan, or most.
Yeah.
I think the fascination that people like Keith Murphy have with her is gross. Like,
she's the best to ever do it.
I agree. But I'm not gonna like the Hawkeyes just because Caitlin Clark played there.
Did you? Might come off as Caitlin Clark slander, and I'm sure she had nothing to do with it. But did you see her newest Nike ad that ran? It's like a print ad, and it's a photo of her shooting a basketball like that on a hoop that's attached to a barn. Yeah.
Yeah, she went to
Dowling.
Grew up in Quail Park in West Des Moines.
So it's like you've never lived on a farm in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I know the one that you said before we went on is one I was thinking, but
You're not gonna take him from me. You're not gonna.
no. But in that vein, I would say one of the more famous ones that maybe people don't think of or associate with Iowa is a family friend. Is Peter Hedges. Do you know who
He's
that
an
is?
author, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people are like, "Who is that?" And then you hear what he did. So he and our aunt Becky are really good friends. They went to high school together. He grew up, went to Valley. Wrote What's Eating Gilbert Grape. Directed Dan in Real Life, Odd Life of Timothy Green, among other things. And so, like Becky on of What's Eating Gilbert Grape was kind of influenced by our Aunt Becky, and then our Aunt Becky has three sons, but two of them are Timothy and Dan. So, anyways, I would say that just because of there is kind of like the personal connection there. And
What else
I
did
will
he
say,
write?
I don't know, but he wrote a book I think it's called The Heights. I have it, it's autographed, but can I slip this one in there too? Because no one else is going to say this, but he's a rising star in the film world, and it's John Householder, oldest son of Pastor Mike Hope. John is.
How did you know Tyler wasn't gonna take it?
He was on my list. I'm really big into videography and stuff.
One of the more talented people, I think, and one of the purest hearts, I think, in that world, probably.
Peter Hedges also wrote About a Boy, in
Okay, I didn't know that. But
case you were curious. And his son is Lucas Hedges, who's like a really famous actor. So
looks just like him too. I mean, which makes sense. So I would say Peter Hedges. So
lock it in.
I got yep.
Tyler, what do you got? You get 2 picks in a row.
All right, so I assumed you two would just figure I'd go with like sports or basketball players.
You're not going Peter Jok?
That's like my favorite basketball player from Iowa.
Not Harrison Barnes.
Yeah, no.
No.
PJ for food all day. I'm going the other way. One of my favorite actors from Iowa, Ron Livingston. You guys know who that is?
Yep. The Office Space.
And my favorite is the Band of Brothers.
Yep.
Where did he grow up at?
Cedar Rapids.
Cedar Rapids is a hotbed for celebrities.
That's where Elijah Wood was born too, right?
Yeah, isn't it Adam Devine? Wasn't he born in Cedar Rapids?
Wasn't he?
Yeah.
Ashton Kutcher,
Yeah.
Kurt Warner.
Yeah. All right, Tyler, what's your second pick?
So should I do the dead one or the fake one?
I want to know the fake one.
So I just found this out as we were researching this. So maybe I'll just do two because this one is a brief appearance. Apparently, Ron Burgundy is from a made-up town in Iowa.
What?
They released like an autobiography of Ron Burgundy as part of the marketing for Anchorman 2.
I thought you were going to do Captain Kirk.
That's what I was saying. That's where you thought I was going. But dead is Herbert Hoover. He's a president. Now, granted, he was president. He was president as the Great Depression came in, so he's not very memorable.
He's the only president we got, though.
But yeah, he's from the state of Iowa, president. I remember going to his estate in elementary school on a field trip.
The presidential library.
Yeah, I'd love to go back there because I actually am interested in that type of stuff. And back then I wasn't. And I just remember field trips. I got Lunchables.
Where was he born? What part of Iowa?
Wasn't it West Branch?
Yep.
Yeah.
West Branch. So
Okay.
those are my two.
Andrew, what do you got? Second pick.
Well, you've told me some, and so I'm gonna want to take yours. I'll say honorable mentions: people who swung through Iowa for a while.
Okay.
Ronald Reagan.
Yep.
I think worked for WHO. I want to say, did he work for J.C. Penney too, or was I making? I might be making that up, but and then obviously Ashton Kutcher, I think is a pretty famous one. A lot of Norwalk kids, and then Jeremy Hellickson. So these are ones. These are ones I don't think anyone's going to mention.
I think Thomas was going to mention someone from Norwalk.
Yeah, that's why I'm not saying it. Obviously, and then one that you guys probably wouldn't have on the radar is active in WWE right now. Seth Rollins, one of the big one of the main WWE guys. He's from Davenport, Iowa, and so the WWE usually,
Do we count that?
It's Iowa, and like
I feel like those river towns, that kind of.
And so he and his wife, her wrestling name is Becky Lynch. They actually live in Davenport, and he has a wrestling school there. So,
that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
like a pro wrestling.
Yeah, and they have a coffee shop out there too. Forgot Cale Sanderson. He's from Iowa. No, he's from Utah. I think he's from Utah.
Gable was born in Iowa, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. And
so what's actually your pick?
Yeah, this dude just drafted a whole team.
I wanted them all. So I would say I would say for relevant people, Seth Rollins.
Okay.
It's funny though. Like again, I brought him up earlier. My friend from Houston, Chase. Like it is kind of funny. Before he came to school here, like people genuinely think that I don't know if it's like Iowans aren't capable of things, but like they had when you rattle off like people from Iowa, people from places like Houston or bigger cities are just mind blown that like.
Well, even if you look at, I know this isn't necessarily them being from Iowa, but if you look at some of the graduates from Iowa State and Iowa too, you'd be really, really surprised.
I mean, for basketball, Doug McDermott and Caitlin Clark, like those are two of the arguably best college basketball players. Like they're in that conversation.
Tyler, I was actually going to ask you this. This is an interesting conversation. Who is more famous, Harrison Barnes or Doug McDermott?
Probably Harrison Barnes in the grand scheme of things.
You don't think Doug McDermott for his college career though, like
but Harrison Barnes will won a ring with the Steph Curry Warriors.
That's true. Yeah. Once you factor
so you're talking like China and all the other NBA fans across the world. If I would say if you had to do numbers, it would be Harrison Barnes.
Okay. Well, Andrew, I feel like you left me my pick.
Real quick, I want to circle back to this. My eye roll about Caitlin Clark wasn't because I didn't think she was really good at what she does, because she's generational. She's a generational talent.
You don't like the conversation around her.
I hate that people act like they have to cheer for the Hawkeyes because they like Caitlin Clark.
Well, my point, she doesn't play for the Hawkeyes anymore.
No, but I know Cyclone fans that'll be like, well, I'll root for the Hawkeyes because I like Caitlin Clark. You don't have to do that.
I'm an Indiana Fever fan.
Yeah, we all are.
Like that. I'm an Indiana Fever fan for sure.
Yeah, I'm a New York Sky fan. Is that a team?
Chicago Sky. You're an Angel
Reese.
Chicago Sky. New York is the
Angel Reese guy here.
I'm just kidding.
What is New York? The capital of something, right?
Are they the Liberty?
They're Liberty. Yep. Yep. We know WNBA stuff. Speaking of WNBA, I am starting a WNBA fantasy basketball league. If anyone wants to join in, message me. So
something to do during the summertime.
Yeah.
Hey, I think we got to wrap up here quick. So you say you
okay. You pissed off the dog. I'm gonna go Aquaman. I'm going Jason Momoa.
Norwalk.
From Norwalk.
He's a handsome fella, and he still shows a lot of love to Iowa too. That's a good pick.
Yeah, he visits Iowa all the time. If you hear him in interviews, he will sometimes say he's from Des Moines, which always bothers me a little bit. But
to his credit, you know why, right?
Yeah, it's easier to say that you're from Des Moines.
Well, that and he wasn't born in his home in Norwalk.
No, yeah, you're right.
He was born in Des Moines. You settle down.
What's crazy, and I'm sure I don't know if we've ever talked about it on here, but Jason Momoa and Brandon Routh were on the same soccer team at Norwalk. So at one point, Superman and Aquaman were on the same soccer team in Norwalk, Iowa. That's kind of crazy.
And here's an
My
Easter
grandma
egg.
taught both of them too.
If he hears this, I'll buy him dinner and a beer. One of my favorite soccer players of all time, Garrett Krall, is from Norwalk.
Yep.
So that's another famous Iowan. He's not going to hear this.
Does anyone here have their last name on a football field in a high school stadium?
A 4A high school stadium.
Yep. Minor Field in Norwalk, Iowa.
Minor Field Warrior Stadium.
Last thing, what was it like? What was his record? Did he win a lot of games? Was he just
my grandpa?
Time? Yeah.
I think he won 243 games, something like that.
Iowa high school football, yeah.
He's in
the teacher too.
What?
Was he just a football coach?
He's a biology teacher.
Okay,
and then part of it had to do too with like if you drive through Norwalk, a lot of it's gone. But at the time, he literally rented his own bulldozer and built a lot of those fields that were around the school. And all he charged the school was just gas money because he was tired of practicing on the practice fields that they had. So he's like, I'll just go make them. And then he did that. So
you're welcome.
Legendary.
Athletes in Norwalk.
Yeah, I didn't know that whole thing.
Real quick. I'm not going to say much because Iowa State lost. I got the total scored points off by 1, but sorry about your Panthers.
Yep. Tough break to end that game.
Is Saturday the last regulars or this week in the last conference game, and then Arch Madness is next week?
Yep, I believe so. Yeah. So I think best case scenario, they're the 2 seed. Worst case 3, I think is what it is, because it's between Drake, Bradley, and Northern Iowa right now.
But I think the only way Missouri Valley gets 2 in is if Drake wins or if
even I wins.
Yeah, or Bradley, either or.
Drake, if Drake probably has to make the championship if they lose to have an outside shot as a.
Yeah, if that happens, I still don't think that they can.
I think they should.
I think Drake should get in over. I don't know who's on the bubble from the Big Ten, but Lenardi has like 9 or 10 teams from the Big Ten, and like
that's just not the way that they select them, though.
Drake,
I agree. I think it's broken in that sense.
Yeah.
But
so,
anyways, that's the pod.
All right, everyone. Thank you for watching.
30 minutes,
yeah. Comment with your favorite Iowan, and have a good day.